Good morning. Welcome to the Danielle Daily. I am Danielle Watson. I am excited to be filming the Danielle Daily at a different time today. I'm very curious to see if anybody will actually join me for a morning time slot. So we'll see. As you guys know, if you've been watching for a while, there's pretty much nothing worse in the world to me than the idea of talking into a screen or a microphone on my own. And I might be doing it this morning. So I'm doing something that scares me. It'll be interesting to see who's available to join us. And today we are going to talk about the one word that was a complete breakthrough for me that made it possible for me to start loving myself. It looks like Tammy is here, Jeremy is here, yay! So you guys just made my day, because my biggest fear with coming on live at this time was that I would be living my biggest fear of talking into a screen or a microphone to myself. So thank you for showing up. I really appreciate you. I'm trying out a new time to see how this works for everybody. And you know, I'm a morning person, so I feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right now and all on fire to talk with you guys. So I love that you guys are here. It looks like Amy is here. Good morning, Tammy. Thank you for that. So if you're just joining us, I'm Danielle Watson. This is the Danielle Daily. This is our first show for the month of November. As I said last month, I'm going to be trying out different times this month for when this works best for all of us so that we can all enjoy doing this together. And today I'm going to be sharing a personal story that hopefully I will not regret sharing later, about the one word that broke me through and made it possible for me to start loving myself. Julio is here. You know, Julio, I thought of you this morning. You're such a loyal viewer. And I thought, oh, if I change the time, is he still going to be able to watch? I'm going to feel terrible if he misses out, because he's always here and I appreciate him so much. So I'm so glad that you were able to join. It looks like Angie is here. I love you guys. You're so awesome. It makes me so happy to see all of your happy faces showing up in my feed. This morning, the first thing I did was look through my feed and notice everyone's Halloween costumes. Those were awesome, and all your children with their Halloween costumes. So I'm gonna dig right into it. Thank you so much for joining me for the Danielle Daily. Again, if you're just joining me, I'm Danielle Watson. This is a daily show. It happens every single weekday. It will be happening at different times this month. I'm trying to figure out what the best time is for me and for you guys. And I appreciate you joining me live, and I appreciate you sharing this broadcast. I appreciate all of the hearts and thumbs up that go across the screen. I love it when you share this. I love it when you watch, even if it's after the broadcast has been recorded, and leave me comments. I interact with all of those. Nothing makes me happier than to see a notification saying somebody left a comment. That makes me smile big. So looks like Amy Rosina is joining us. Awesome. Okay, so today I promised you that we would talk about the one word that broke me through and made it possible for me to start loving myself. So stories like this are always hard, because although I spent the entire month of October talking about falling in love with yourself and things you can do to do that, telling the story means admitting that there was a time in my life when I didn't love myself, and it wasn't that long ago. And, you know, we don't always like to go back to those places, but I thought it would really help you guys to know where I started, so that you're not comparing where I am today you're not comparing yourself or people in your life to where you see me being today. Because today, my friend Amy Burks calls me the queen of self-love, and I would agree with her. I have really learned to love and accept myself, but I did have to learn it. It's not something that I probably was born with it, but I unlearned it at some point. And there was actually a moment in time where things changed for me, and there was one word associated with it, and I wanted to share that with you guys. It looks like David is here. David says, "We love you. That's why we watch. You are making a cloudy UK a lot more sunny." Thank you, David. Oh my gosh, I love you. I so appreciate all your compliments. You just make my heart feel so good, and make it easy for me to show up and smile here. And just, I love you guys, all of you. I really appreciate you. So I don't know the exact year that this happened because if you know me, I'm not really good with time. This is not one of my strong suits. So I'm going to guess that it was sometime around 2009, 2010. I remember I was sitting in my bathroom up on the counter. I'm kind of short, so I like to sit up on the counter when I do my makeup or when I'm picking at my adult acne. That's my place of choice to sit and do that. And I remember 2009, 2010, I was sitting up on that counter in my bathroom in between the dual sinks, and I looked into the mirror and there wasn't any light coming out of my eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, when did this happen? The spark in my eyes had gone out, and it was just so sad to look into my own eyes and see that it wasn't there. And at the time I was reading a lot of books on personal development, and there's a particular author. Her name is Louise Hay. Many of you have probably heard of her. She has a publishing company called Hay House. And I had recently read her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And one of the exercises in that book is a mirror exercise where you're supposed to look into a mirror and tell yourself, I love you. I really love you. And that to me at the time felt like the most horrible thing that I could possibly try to do, because I knew that if I did it, it would feel like a lie, and I knew I would feel like I was confronting something that I didn't want to confront, and I just knew that it would feel uncomfortable and it might make me cry. And I just could not think of anything worse than looking into a mirror and telling myself, oh, I love you, because it would just be hideous. It would be a hideous lie, and there would be no avoiding how that made me feel because I would be able to see it on my face. You might have noticed my face is pretty expressive. I'm not a very good liar because it's just sort of written all over my face what I'm actually thinking and feeling. So I was reading this book, and there was that exercise in it, and I thought, I don't know how anybody ever does that. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And so I kind of set it aside, and I kept reading these personal development books and these spirituality books, and I call it my crash course in spiritual education. It was like I went through school and I gorged in on all that, and then I graduated and I took a little break, and then at some point I was like, oh, I need to learn about personal development and spirituality, and so I just gorged on everything I could get a hold of and just read and read and read all the time. So another book that I read around that time, after I read Louise Hay's book, was actually a book, and I don't remember the title, but the author, her name was Denise Linn, and she had a little bit of a Native American flair to her. I don't know if she's actually Native American, but she had that Native American flair to her. And I remember reading her book, and in her book, she talked about using the words, I'm willing to consider loving myself. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a thinking person. I'm always thinking. And so the idea that I'd be willing to consider loving myself resonated for me. I'm willing to consider a lot of things. In fact, if you're close to me, you know that one of my favorite things I like to do is to debate, to just take a position on something that I'm not actually invested in and I don't actually necessarily believe in, and argue it all the way to the nth degree as if I do. And people who don't know me very well, that can be a problem. But if you know me well, you know that sometimes I'll argue on something whether I believe it or not. It's a lot of fun. But the idea that I was willing to consider loving myself was the breakthrough. And I didn't know it in the moment that was the breakthrough. I read those words. I read particularly the word consider, and I thought, oh yeah, I'd be willing to consider that. I'm willing to consider a lot of things. In fact, I really enjoy considering many different ideas and possibilities. And so it just sort of like bounced around inside my brain, this idea that I'd be willing to consider loving myself. And so I didn't start doing anything with that right away. It just sort of floated around in my head. And it looks like Rochelle has joined us and Deetra has joined us. Thank you so much. Good morning. This is Danielle Watson with your edition of the Danielle Daily, the first in November, and we're talking about the one word that broke me through and made it possible for me to love myself. So I just shared my story about how I came upon the word, and the word was consider. So instead of doing what a lot of self-help people recommend you do, which is talk yourself into loving yourself. Oh, I love you so much. Looking in the mirror and saying that. Because I don't know about you, but when I came across that idea, that felt like a heinous lie, and it wasn't something I wanted to look in my eyes and say to myself because I knew it was going to feel awful. But I came across the idea that what if I was willing to consider loving myself? And I'm a thinking person, and so I'm willing to consider many things. And for me, that resonated. That made it possible for me to think about considering that I could love myself. And that just kind of stuck with me. And it sort of marinated inside me for a long time. And I don't really think that there was any one moment when I suddenly did love myself, but I just started taking steps in that direction. I started thinking about myself as somebody I could consider loving, and that maybe I was lovable, and that maybe I was okay, and maybe I was flawed, but in a wonderful way that made me me. And just slowly over time, it developed into this love affair that I have with myself. And I know that sounds weird, that culminated in that moment in 2015 when I wrote my first note to self. And that was inspired by actually looking in the mirror and just all these beautiful words about how much I loved myself spilling out in the mirror. I was having a really difficult day. Life was sucking. But I walked by that mirror and I saw the sparkle in my eye. I really think that's what drew me to the mirror. Was I knew that the circumstances around me were crap right then. But I walked by that mirror and there was a sparkle in my eye, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you're in there. Oh my gosh, we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. I love you. Thank you for sticking with me. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm just talking to myself, but that's really how it happened. And so I wanted to share that story with you guys today, because I know sometimes we see somebody who's become masterful at something, or at least very skilled at it, and we compare where we are to where they have come to. And that gap seems so wide, and we don't actually know where they started from, if they started in a similar place to us or not. So I hope that sharing my story about how there was a time when I very much did not love myself, I couldn't think of anything worse than looking into a mirror and trying to tell myself I love myself. I just knew that was going to be a disaster. And to where I've come now, where I can look into this camera right now and say, I love you, you're amazing. Look at all the amazing things you can do. You're an incredible person. You do wonderful things for other people. That was a long journey, and it all started with this idea that I could consider loving myself. I do have today's note to self for you. I wonder if you guys have any comments. I wonder if you have any stories of your own about learning to love yourself. I remember when I first started coaching, I would do this exercise with people. When I actually did coaching in person, I haven't done coaching in person in a number of years. It's been all virtual for a very long time. But when I started helping women really claim their personal power and start to love themselves, I would put them in front of a mirror and actually put them through the firestorm of trying to say, I love myself into the mirror, not because I thought that they could do it, because I wanted them to witness how far they were from that. And pretty much everybody had the same reaction that I did. Like, I don't want to do that. That sounds like the worst thing in the world. Or if they were brave enough to do it, which I certainly hadn't been the first time that I was exposed to that idea, they cried. It was awful. And, you know, I never intend to put anyone through anything awful, but there sometimes is value in marking where we are, and being in a place where you look in a mirror and you lie to yourself saying, I love you, and it feels awful, is definitely something that you want to experience, so that when you experience that moment of looking into the mirror and saying, I do love you, you can feel that difference and how amazingly fulfilling that is. So any stories at all before I give today's note to self? It's been fun hosting the Danielle Daily at a different time than normal. I'm curious, how you guys feel about this. I will probably give a few other times of the day a try before I settle into my regularly scheduled program, but I will be here every single weekday throughout the month of October. The month of November. And I do plan to actually record on Thanksgiving, which should be interesting because I'll be, probably stuffed full of turkey and all kinds of other things, but we'll make it work. And I really appreciate you guys joining me. So I am going to give you today's note to self. So I encourage you, as always, to write this down. If you're leaving a comment, you have a little bit of time to do that. Please type it in if you have any stories about learning to love yourself. You never know when sharing your story is going to inspire somebody and make all the difference in the world. I can't tell you how many people I've had come back to me years later after I've said something that to me didn't even seem that significant. And they say, oh, you said this thing and it changed my life and I did this thing and that thing and this thing because of it. And it just blows me away. And I'm sure that any of us sharing our story about anything has had that impact on people, and we just don't always know it. So I always encourage you to share what you're thinking. So today's note to self, write it down. Remember, yesterday I was dressed as the Positivity Princess for Halloween, and I commanded you to write it down. I don't have my crown today, so I can't command you to do it as the Princess of Positivity, but I really would encourage you to write this down because you never know when it's going to be the exact words that you need to read to keep your life going in the direction that you want it to go. And living the life you want to live and acting the way you want to act and thinking the way you want to think is really just all about practice. And these little notes to self are just a way for you to practice living the way you want to live. So today's note to self is, Dear Self, be willing to consider loving yourself more. So no matter how much you feel like you already love yourself, this is a great reminder. Remember that it's okay to consider loving yourself more. In fact, it's more than okay. It's awesome to consider loving yourself more. I'll read it again in just a second. It looks like Nadia joined us. Tammy says, definitely sharing this with someone who could use this now. Awesome. Yes, please share this broadcast with anybody you know who's struggling with depression, with self-love, with divorce, with separation, with heartache, with family issues. This might be just the message they need to hear about self-love and how they can start that journey. Julio says, I think part of loving oneself starts by accepting oneself and stop trying to change yourself to please others. Like you've said before, change because you want to, not because other people want you to. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, that's what I talked about yesterday, that changing yourself has so much value, but make sure that you're doing it for you, not because somebody else said there's something wrong with you. The parts of you that don't please you are absolutely worth putting in the time and the practice to change so that you can become more of who it is you want to become. But we all have things that other people don't like, and that has nothing to do with us, and it has everything to do with them. So that people pleasing, cut it out. No more people pleasing. And remember, if you start going down that route, just hear my voice in your head saying, stop it. Danielle said, stop it. So again, today's note to self, Dear Self, be willing to consider loving yourself more. You can always love yourself more. You can always appreciate yourself more. You can always find another amazing aspect of yourself that by loving it and accepting it will allow you to bring it out more into your daily life. And you never know when that's going to be something that changes somebody else's life or makes their day better or makes them smile. So I so appreciate you guys for joining me. Thank you so much. It was fun trying this new time. I'm not sure what time I'm going to pop up tomorrow, so I suggest that you subscribe to receive notifications, not just about this post, but actually notifications of when I go live so that you can join me, because as I said in the beginning, there is absolutely nothing worse to me right now than the idea of talking into a screen or a microphone to myself. So you guys are making this possible for me. You're making it bearable for me. You're actually making it fun for me. I really look forward to seeing your names. I look forward to the little hearts that go across the screen. It was so fun yesterday. I had ghosts and witches and pumpkins, and it was awesome. That made my heart so full. So join me again tomorrow. Make sure you receive notifications. If you don't know how to do that, I will post instructions on how you can do that in the comments after the broadcast. I do go back after the broadcast and add show notes. So if you've already watched but you missed something, feel free to watch again. Please share this with people. They will love you for it. They will love themselves more for it. And I will see you guys again tomorrow, okay? I love you all. Bye. Mwah.